and a very warm welcome to Bharata First. You're watching Big Picture with me, Frank Rajan Pereira. First, let me inform you about Bharata First Knowledge Center, an initiative that will help each and one of you transform the way you learn. We had our first international relations class on Thursday, and it has had a phenomenal response. All those who have been a part of it have had a great time. You too can be a part of this journey. Go to our website kc.bharatafirst.com for more details and register before the second live class, which is to begin shortly. This is the last chance to avail the limited period early bird discounts. Bharata First Knowledge Center will change the way you learn. It's like something you've never experienced. Be a part of this incredible journey right now. Since you're here, I would like to thank you for your continued support. For those of you who haven't already subscribed, please like the video, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and then all notifications. Do subscribe to our newsletter to get some incisive content. The Bharata First team runs a daily Big Picture quiz. Please participate by going through the description in Big Picture videos. Here are the UPI IDs for those of you who would like to come forward and make a contribution. A small contribution that you make will be a giant leap for us to keep bringing you this content. We are also considering ads and sponsorships. You can reach us at marketing@bharatafirst.com. All this information along with some must-see recommendations are in the description of the video. Please go through it. And now on to our discussion. As a part of promoting electric vehicles adoption and manufacturing in the country, the government recently announced the revised FAME 2 subsidy. The FAME 2 scheme announced back in 2019 did lay out guidelines for EVs that could be eligible to qualify for the subsidy. The recent amendment in the scheme has extended the subsidy amount for the EVs that had met the previous eligibility criteria. This revision has certainly electrified the EV industry in the country as the scheme has been extended to 2024. While such a push is imperative for faster green vehicle adoption, a more significant reason that is obstructing the adoption is a limited choice available to a customer. Undoubtedly, companies are coming up with new eclectic two-wheelers and larger OEMs also playing a vital role in electric PVs. The ratio of choice given to making the shift slower. In this edition of Big Picture, we will analyze how ready is India for electric vehicles. Joining me on the program today are Arun Malhotra, former MD Nissan India and automobile expert, Urmi Goswami, assistant editor of the Economic Times, and Abhishek Saxena, public policy expert, Niti Aayog. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of Big Picture. So, Abhishek, let me start the program with you first. Let's first try and understand and analyze, how far down the line have we come as far as e-vehicle technology is concerned. How ready are we as far as using e-vehicles are concerned? How far along the way have we come?
Okay, so thank you, Frank, for this wonderful discussion and inviting me. See, I think from an electric vehicle perspective, as a world, we have matured to a great deal. The prices have come down to a level where the electric vehicles are on an upfront basis equal to the internal combustion engine ones. The performance and the efficiency of electric vehicles is at par, and in some cases more than the internal combustion engines one. Recently, we've seen a Tesla get a 5 out of 5 crash test rating, which is not even feasible for an internal combustion engine one. At the same point of time, the battery, which is one of the key drivers of the electric vehicle, has matured to a great extent, and the prices have fallen more than 90% in the last 10 years, and now they are at $137 per kilowatt hour. That is huge low that we are seeing. At the same time, across the world, we are seeing a huge uptake, and to my mind, I think I'm very clear on this aspect that we are at a cusp or an inflection point where the growth from now on would be exponential. And we've seen huge uptake of EVs in markets, let's say like Norway, where more than 50% of the new vehicle sales is electric vehicles at this point of time. We have seen huge electric vehicle sales in US, in Europe, and in other parts of India. Along with the same time, India is steadily moving forward in that direction, and we've seen huge progress also in India. We've seen a huge proliferation of electric rickshaws. We are having more than 20 lakh electric rickshaws that are running on Indian roads as of now. So I think India is also moving steadily in that direction along with the world. and electric vehicle technology across vehicle segment, whether it is two-wheelers, three-wheelers, or cars or buses, have matured to a great deal in the last couple of years, I must say.
All right, Arun Malhotra, let me bring you in now. As far as electric vehicles are concerned, how do we ensure that it goes to the masses? How do we ensure we see it being used on a large scale?
I agree with Abhishek that in terms of technology, EVs have moved a lot, both in the international market and domestic market. But if you ask me frankly, in terms of customer acceptance or customer readiness, we are still in early days. And the only way I see it happening is that we need to incentivize the early people who are buying, whether it's a two-wheeler or a four-wheeler or three-wheeler, much more. And that is something which we are not doing. Just to take the FAME 2 policy which came out, it's a very nice policy because it focuses on demand creation, it focuses on infrastructure, it focuses on phase manufacturing program. But 2 years out of 3 years, the policy is over and the budget utilization is not more than 6 to 7%. And that's I'm talking on a fairly upward basis. So effectively, it's like a cricket match. In a 50-over match, 33 match overs are there, and we just scored 7% of the runs. I expect there'll be much more in the last year, but I think there is a lot to be done. I personally feel that for demand creation, two things are important. One is giving that confidence to the customer. And the confidence to the customer will come when we have more and more charging stations. I just seen recently charging stations coming up, but still they are very few and far between, both in the city and also on the highways. Second thing, there are certain preconditions being put today. Just to take on two-wheelers, we have preconditions in terms of power, in terms of range, in terms of various factors, in terms of indigenization. So effectively, not more than 20% of the two-wheelers are eligible for the FAME benefit, which we have, which is fairly substantial. So probably we need to be more liberal initially. We can tighten the screws later because we need to start off. The only segment where I find a lot of activities happening is the three-wheeler segment. And when I say three-wheeler, I'm talking of the motorized three-wheeler. I'm not talking about auto rickshaw, where there is a natural, because the owning cost, the operating cost, because the usage is much higher, which is better. But if I talk of two-wheelers and four-wheelers, we are still on very, very early days. So that's the way the challenge I see. State governments are taking the lead. Delhi has taken a phenomenal lead. I wish the lead which is taken by Delhi is taken by other states also. That can also go a long way.
Urmi, since you are here, let's take this particular aspect forward. We're talking about how EV ready we are. What is the infrastructure that we have in place? What more needs to be done? Can we take it to a really large scale, to a mass scale where we use only electric vehicles going forward?
Okay, so since you have asked me this question, let me sort of lay out the pitch first, and so that I'm better able to answer this question. The first thing we need to realize when we are having a conversation on EVs is to understand that EV stands for electric vehicles, which is basically like an operating system, as against the ICE, which is the internal combustion engine. So think about like an Android operating system and an Apple operating system, like an iOS and an Android. So the two operating systems. Now you can put these operating systems in various sort of receptacles. So you can put it in a laptop, you can put it in a tablet, you can put it in a phone, right? So the electric vehicle is an operating system which you put in different sort of containers, so to speak. So it can be a two-wheeler, a three-wheeler, a four-wheeler, or a six or eight-wheeler, which is basically a public transport system, right? Like a bus, right? So I think the first thing that we need to establish is that, because whenever we have this conversation on EVs, the mental image is about two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and four-wheelers. We forget the big component called the public, the bus, or anything that would be part of a public transport system. So the question you asked was, are we ready? Are we EV ready? So this is how I would answer you. Given where we are, both in terms of climate change and emissions, but also given that this is an industry, this is where the mobility industry is going, India cannot be anything but be EV ready. Now, what do I mean by that? There are two aspects to it. One is looking at it as an industry where we are a player. Now, if you look at the sort of the vehicle, and I want to call it vehicle so that I can get all the various types of vehicles into it. India is a big player, right? Uh, and we export in terms of two-wheelers and components. So we are a player in this. Now, when the operating system is moving from internal combustion to electric, we shouldn't lose the opportunity. We can't lose our competitive advantage, and therefore, we should be EV ready as an industry, even if the uptake within the country is slow. We should be looking at it as an opportunity for exports. There are other countries where the electric vehicle uptake is faster. Can India be a player in those markets? So therefore, industry-wise, as an opportunity, we have no option but to be EV ready. So we have to get the auto industry moving, not just at domestic markets, but at international markets. And I'm not talking just in terms of Norway. Look at Southeast Asia, look at Africa. There are opportunities, so that's one. The second part of the question is what ultimately, whether we are talking about EVs or internal combustion vehicles, the what is the issue that is at hand? The issue is about mobility, and I think the thing to look at is India serving the mobility needs of its people in a manner that is in keeping with where the world is moving, which is in terms of electric vehicles, both as a climate opportunity, but also as a climate response, as an economic opportunity. And then the question becomes, where are we putting our accent? How much of our effort is going into providing mass public transport, which is based on electric vehicles? And the fact remains, in this country, if I'm going by the last census that we have, that's the 2011 census, for about 46% of households do not have any private vehicle, and by which I mean that includes bicycles. So I'm talking in terms of non-motorized vehicles. They depend on, a large number of them will depend on public transport.
Mhm.
So are we looking at the EV sort of play in those terms? So once you lay out the structure of how you want your mobility needs to be met, then the question is, are we EV ready? And in that case, I would say, no, we are not there. But yes, as Arun mentioned, as Abhishek mentioned, we are having the conversation. The FAME programs, FAME 1 and FAME 2, did bring up the conversation. So it is not that we have said no to EV or closed our mind to it, but is the conversation as robust as it should be? And I think we need to acknowledge that India's mobility needs and the way electric vehicle uptake will evolve in this country is different from the way it will evolve in Europe, in the United States, Southeast Asia, or even in Africa. We have to find, but it's a huge opportunity. And yes, the conversation is beginning, but I think we need to map our requirements with the conversation.
Absolutely. The opportunity is huge, and we need to look at what best suits us and take that model forward. We can't follow any other model, is what Urmi is suggesting. All right, taking the discussion forward now, Abhishek, let me bring you in once again. You heard out both the other panelists as well. So let's talk about, from a policy perspective, is there something that we can do so that we have some kind of a mindset change as far as people are concerned, so that they can start using EVs more often and more of it? And also, is there something that we can do to incentivize the usage of EVs?
Right. So I think very well points raised by the other panelist here. I think we need to understand the cost dynamics and the economics of how an EV works. So from a cost perspective, EV has a higher cost, an upfront cost I'm talking about, from an internal combustion engine. So it may vary from, let's say, 1.2 times to 1.5 to nearly 2 times of an internal combustion engine. But the operating cost of an electric vehicle is nearly 1/10, and I'm saying this across vehicle segments. That is the benchmark I'm talking about. So the more the usage of a vehicle is there, so the faster is its recovery, and its cost parity comes in at par with internal combustion engine one. So with this kind of cost dynamics, the commercial vehicles is gonna be the first movers. So, and that is the primary reasons that we've seen, and we have seen a huge uptake in terms of electric three-wheelers, which is a commercial vehicle segment, which is used for businesses. So that is the first vehicle segment that we are talking about. Now, from the perspective of incentives, see, my idea is that electric vehicles cannot be solely driven by just by incentives. Obviously incentives plays a huge part in that, but there are different levers that you need to pull in. There are different strategies that a country has to adopt to increase the uptake of electric vehicles. Now let me just explain, and let me just elaborate on what I mean by that. See, if I am talking about, let's say, a three-wheeler segment, or a commercial vehicle segment, internal combustion engines have something called a permit requirements. So they require, so when a person buys a electric auto, or a person buys a electric four-wheeler, the light motor vehicle that we call it, he has to get a permit. That permits varies from state to state, from, let's say, 1 to 1.5 lakhs to as high as 4 to 5 lakhs. Now that has been waived off by the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, and states have readily accepted that. There are other fees, there are other charges which are associated with buying a vehicle. Now a huge component is the GST. You have a GST which is 28% on normal vehicles, and compared to that, electric vehicles have a GST of only 5%. So there's a huge 23% differential. You have cost associated like a registration fee and a road tax. So these are also to be taken as incentives. They may not be direct fiscal incentives or direct cash in the hands of the consumers, but they are surely incentives in the right direction. Along
Right.
with that, I think a lot of efforts needs to be done, and I think I am including everybody, including governments, civil society, NGOs, on the awareness of it. You need to take steps like building EV only zones. You need to have preferential parking for electric vehicles, and drive consumer awareness around this segment, so that the uptake also is faster, and a lot of manufacturers compete in this space for bringing out the best product in that.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so Arun Malhotra, let's talk about another aspect that Urbi Goswami raised. I think it's a very important aspect that I'd like to take forward with you. Is the industry ready? And is this a big opportunity for the industry as well?
You see, industry, I'll be very frank with you. If you look at among the two-wheelers, since we have placed that two-wheelers are going to contribute about two-thirds of the volumes. If you look at the FAME policy, out of 15.5 lakh vehicles we wanted to do in the 3 years, 10 lakhs was two-wheelers. If you look at the mainstream two-wheeler companies, and there are 4 or 5 of them, I don't want to name them in the show, but you would know them, which are the 5. They haven't made any serious attempt in entering the EV market. But yes, there are other players, like Ola has made, some other companies are making things. So I say industry is waiting and watching. That is one thing which is very clearly. Now, the question which is there is, how do you trigger off some reaction? Talking from the customer perspective. Now, let's forget industry. If I look at the customer, he wants only 4 hours when you're looking at electric vehicle. One is the right price, which I think Abhishek rightly mentioned. When you look at the price, you have to look at the entire aspect of it. Other is the range of the vehicle. The third is the reach, which is basically that how easier for you to reach the charging points. And fourth, last but not the least, is that reassurance factor. Now, each of these factors will have to be focused on. Right price, probably still we believe the low-end two-wheelers, they are still about 50 to 60% higher. That's why I believe in the small commercial vehicles, and what Abhishek mentioned, clearly there is a very good fit. But two-wheelers is one area which you really want to move ahead. There the fit is just not coming in. If you look at the volumes of last year, which are just concluded, they don't even contribute 1% of the volume, even after 3 years. And if you take cars, it would be not even less than 5.5%. So I believe this FAME policy, which was a big impetus and which I think, which is totally budget is unutilized. Not more than 10% of the budget has been utilized. Can we give a kickstart in two terms? In terms of infrastructure, more and more charging points faster and faster. We have increased, but there's a long way to go. And second thing is, can we raise this upfront benefit at least for the 1 year? I'm just saying, even if we raise it up, the budget still will not be utilized fully. So we'll have to take a more practical view. I believe there's a Ramayana and a Mahabharata. We can have Adarshwad view like Ramayana, but the Mahabharata means you have to look at all the blacks and the whites and the shades of grey which has to emerge from it. So that's the way I look at it.
Absolutely. Urmi, another aspect that I wanted to take forward with you, there's this whole issue of disposal of batteries and how this could have a major problem on the
Right.
environment. So on one end, you're trying to get in eco-friendly and environment-friendly options, which could have a different kind of an effect later on the
Right.
very same environment you're trying to save. How do you look at
Yes.
that?
Well, you spoke at the disposal end. I'll start at the other end also, because the environmental effects are on both ends, and that's the resource use end. I mean, the one thing that I find the most disturbing in any conversation we have on EVs in this country is the complete focus that happens on private or basically on vehicles which are 2, 3, and 4 wheelers. And that is deeply disconcerting as far as I'm concerned, because at the end of the day, where we need to contextualize the question of EVs, and I am getting to your question through this whole question of moving from internal combustion to electric vehicles is driven in large measure globally because of the environment question, right? And if you look at it, then are we the way this electric vehicle conversation is unfolding, does it best serve the cause of the environment? And my own sense is that it doesn't. I mean, if today you were like, consider this, what is the population of cars per thousand is what, 9, 10, I think, or as low as that, or maybe at best some a pretty low number. I mean, Abhishek could give you the exact number, but uh, and despite that, take any of our cities, you are stuck in congestion. Now, if you replace the internal combustion engine with an electric engine, you might cut away with the some of the obvious pollution. But does it take away your congestion? So your congestion question is not answered. Are we replacing one level of pollutants with another level of pollutants? That is also there. And most importantly, making each of these vehicles requires resources. Are we using have the best possible use of the resources in the initial stage? At least that's in the making, in the manufacturing. So are we if our purpose is mobility, are we being resource efficient about our mobility? That's one. And then, of course, the question that you mentioned, which is about how do you end of life disposal? Are we even considering the question of how this end of life disposal is going to happen, and what does it mean for resources? Again, can we reuse them? How do we get them back into the system? So there are all these unresolved questions, and sometimes then therefore it feels that given the way given the way your society is, your country is structured, we are having a conversation that goes round and round but does not serve the purpose it was intended to serve, which is addressing the issue of the environment. I am all for, I'm not saying that the auto industry has to come to an end. Of course, it doesn't. I mean, even if you do use mass public transport, you would like to own your own vehicle to take out for some purpose when you go out. But would you take it out every day like we do now, because there is no other option? And that and if you do have a robust mass public transport system, the benefits that will accrue from it are actually far greater. Because
Right.
when I am looking at it from a country perspective, it's not just, I'm not looking at the benefit of just one industry, but we are looking at the larger industry. And the questions that you raise about the environmental question, the environmental footprint of our choice for mobility, whether it's electric vehicles or it's an ICE vehicle, is critical in determining what we should do, should be critical. If at the end of the day we end up with a bigger problem about how we dispose of batteries, and I'm not saying we are going to end up necessarily, because I'm sure there is conversation that's engaging at that other end, except that it hasn't reached that critical mass to make a difference. But consider this: in this country, look at the size of the problem, and then let's work backwards. So I think
Absolutely.
we need to be a little more nimble and imaginative in the way we approach the question of EVs. As I said right at the beginning, electric vehicles, think of it as an operating system. Don't think of it in the box in which it comes. You know.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think those are very, very valid points, and we hope that we look at them holistically as well going forward. All right. Talking about going forward, time to get quick closing comments from all my panelists with the best way forward. Starting first with you, Abhishek.
Thank you so much. I think Urmi has raised some very valid points on on looking at electric vehicles and the externalities that exist with the internal combustion engine holistically, and now not just look at, let's say, environmental aspect of CO2 emissions or pollutions. See, let me say this very categorically. If we are to drive our electric vehicle revolution on the cars, we are trying to create a city which is unlivable. We are trying to wreak havoc in our major metropolitan cities in terms of congestion, in terms of other negative externalities which are essentially associated with the private transport. So we have to look at electric vehicles, but that electric vehicle revolution should be driven on the backbone of public transport. That should be accessible, that should be affordable, and most importantly, that should be equitable to all. So equity is the biggest aspect that we are talking about. We do so at this point of time we have 20 cars per thousand population, and US has somewhere around 800 to 900 cars per thousand population. Just see the kind of congestion and the kind of madness it creates in our super metros or in our 4 million plus cities at this point of time. If we are trying to drive the electric revolution only on the backbone of car, that would be the end of our cities and end of our growth stories. So the idea is we should be cognizant of this fact that the electric vehicle should move on the backbone of public and mass transit. The buses should be the backbone of it. At this point of time, we have abysmally low number of buses. As at a country of 1.130 crore population, we have only 1.5 lakh buses which are with our state-run transport units. So that is abysmally low, and you can see it across the cities that the access to public transport is very low, and that has a negative consequence even in the areas of health, access to education, access to livelihoods, employments, women participation in all aspects. So I think the electric vehicle should be at the core, but the public transport should be the heart of it.
Absolutely. Arun Malhotra?
So I agree with Abhishek. The focus has to be on public transportation, but another segment which we are not focusing on, where you ask me effectively the distraction is the highest, is the last mile connectivity on commercial load movement. That's a segment, if you ask me, will be even bigger than the passenger segment in three-wheelers. And buses clearly comes out. So if we have decided that public transportation, and when I say public transportation, it also talks of the last mile connectivity, how do we focus all our energies, all our resources on this? But I still believe two-wheelers is the tipping point. Somehow we are losing the two-wheeler game, and that's what I'm saying. So effectively, we need to sit down. The industry associations, there is Niti Aayog, there is various companies, there are state governments. So all these people need to put their heads together. And can we have a pan-India policy? Like the benefits available in Delhi are unique. But if you go across 20 kilometers of Haryana, the benefits fall dramatically. Now, can we have at least on EV a national consensus that these are things which is basic paramount to the EV movement? If we can have that, it'll go a long way. Public transportation, small commercial vehicle, that's the focus to give it. But don't leave the two-wheeler out. Car, we can still put on the back burner, I personally feel.
Right. And Urmi Goswami, quick closing comments from you with the best way forward.
Well, I've spoken enough about public transport, but there's something else I wanted to focus on very quickly, and that's the industry sector. I think this is a huge opportunity for growth and growth. Two wheelers, which Arun mentioned, are really critical not just for domestic use but also for exports, and that's a market we can't afford to lose to other countries, uh, uh, which are also looking actively at that market. So therefore, that's one part. But I also think there's one more part of the CV question vis-a-vis the industry that we don't touch upon very often, and that is the industry itself. Auto companies need to reimagine themselves. I think that is another place where some bit of handholding and policy work needs to happen, because what is this kind of service that auto companies will be providing in a world that is dominated by an electric mode of transport? Is it more service led? What kind of components? I think that kind of restructuring, if there is handholding from the at the policy level, at least conversations happening, it's not only a huge opportunity, but it's a place where India can actually steal the march. Because remember, electric vehicles also depends a lot on, we are also talking about building not just on electric vehicles and our existing auto sort of infrastructure, but building on our IT infrastructure, which again is our strong point. So if we
Sure.
can get all our strengths together, this could well be a sector in which India is a major player in the world. And this is the moment of flux. We can't afford to lose our edge now. If we snooze, we lose. And I think that's what we should remember.
All right, we'll have to leave it at that. Thank you so much to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. Well, then, what's coming out of this discussion is that electric vehicle technology has come a long way in our country, but we are still not where we would like to be. Infrastructure for use of EVs continues to be a big challenge. We need a multi-pronged approach to see wide-scale use of EVs, like better information, strong policies, and incentives, as well as rationalization of prices. This will take some time, but we should eventually get there. Now, before I go, let me once again inform you about Bharata First Knowledge Center, an initiative that will help each one of you and transform the way you learn. We had our first international relations class on Thursday, and it has had a phenomenal response. All those who have been a part of it have had a great time. You too can be a part of this journey. Go to our website kc.bharatafirst.com for more details and register before the second live class, which is to begin shortly. This is the last chance to avail the limited period early bird discounts. Bharata First Knowledge Center will change the way you learn. It's like something you've never experienced. Be part of this incredible journey today. Since you're here, I would like to thank you once again for your continued support. For those of you who haven't already subscribed, please like the video, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and then all notifications. Do subscribe to our newsletter as well to get some incisive content. The Bharata First team runs a daily Big Picture quiz. Please participate by going through the description in Big Picture videos. Here are the UPI IDs for those of you who would like to come forward and contribute. A small contribution that you make will be a giant leap for us to keep bringing you this content. We are also considering ads and sponsorships. You can reach us at marketing@bharatafirst.com. All this information, along with some must-see recommendations, are in the description of the video. Please go through it.